This week on the Baseline Podcast, Josh and I are back with another preview. This week, it is the AFC West in the NFL and the Big 12 in college football. The Big 12 has many new additions. We're going to talk about where we think each team will end up, which team will be contenders and which teams will be at the bottom. And then in the AFC West, will the Chiefs remain the top in that division, or will someone else arise? All that and so much more coming up on the Baseline Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Baseline Podcast. I'm Ben, that's Josh, and we are here alive and well. I have not died of the heat. It's been like 100 degrees for like 4 straight days. I don't even know, but it's been nuts. I hope you guys had a great week. I know the last episode got out on Monday, but it's fine. We live with just life as nothing, as life is just, it's going by like a breeze in the air, and Ben's technical difficulties tend to compound, but that's okay. Josh, how has been your week? Is it as hot as it is here? Because I'm done with the heat and I would rather just stay inside.
Yeah, no, I actually was wearing a hoodie on Wednesday in the evening. We've had a couple days lately in the 70s. We had some rain, and I think that helped cool some things down. Personally, for me, though, I'm going to be hot over this next about week to 2 weeks, because today is the second day of 7 straight days I got to work, and I'm also working 11 of the next 13. So I'm going to need to be prioritizing sleep. Man. I'm going to need all the cool days, at least outside, that I can get, because, I mean, it's way hotter in the factory than it is outside. Dude. And when we get like 90s, then it's feeling hundreds in there. But
man, how they do that to you, man.
How they do that? Yeah, it's just how like covering vacation works. Like if the person opposite of you takes vacation, you got to cover them. So
that's the one perk, I guess, of being a teacher that I've had, is like I always like to tell the people, like, I don't get free vacation. Like, it's like I get paid like basically less than most people. Like, you usually get paid every month, but in teaching you get paid like 10 out of the 12 months instead of 12 months, but they stretch it out anyways. But what I think it's hilarious is that I guess it's not hilarious, but it's the nice thing is that, I don't have to do that, where I don't have to cover people's vacation when they're on vacation in the summer. I get to just do other random things. But yeah, that sucks. But you know what doesn't suck, Josh, is that sports. And more specifically, what would you say if you were a college senior and someone would come up to you and say, hey, you're going to win the World Series in baseball, you're going to get drafted in the MLB draft, and then about 10 months later, you're going to get your debut in the MLB. And then in about a year, you're going to be starting the All-Star game. What would you say to that, Josh? What would you say?
I'd say that's crazy, because that's never been done in baseball history.
It's nuts to think about.
Until now.
Until now, Paul Skeens, who, if you haven't watched this man pitch, I'll be honest with you, Josh, and some people have brought this up. He might be the best pitcher in baseball right now. And I know that's saying a lot for a guy that's only been pitching for like 2 months, but like, he's been nearly unhittable. Like, honestly, nearly unhittable. He's been phenomenal. And am I crazy to say that he might be like currently right now, like one, if not the best pitcher in baseball right now?
I've been hearing other people say that too, and limited obviously just to the 2024 version of everybody. But the guy throws triple digits, nearly unhittable. Had the almost no hitter,
nasty slider
in his last start. Nobody seems to be able to have him figured out yet. So I mean, there hasn't been too many dominant arms in the National League. I mean, there's a couple guys you could throw in the discussion, but yeah, at least in terms of, I guess, this season, Paul has been one of the more dominant forces.
Yeah, I mean, he's a big dude, by the way. Like, if you ever look at he's just massive, and his like workout routine, I don't know if you've seen it, like where he has the water jug, like on his shoulders. I don't know if you saw that. Like, that's how he warms up, which I just think is mind boggling to me. Mainly because I'm weak, Josh. I'm weak. But that's just a little bit of baseball news. Obviously, the All-Star game, I believe, is happening. Is it next week?
The All-Star game, I think, is next week.
Yes, next week.
I think it's next week. The Derby's got all 8 of its participants.
Which, by the way, this might be one of the worst Derby, like, outside of Jose Ramirez. Like, there's a few guys that like Pete Alonso, but like, I just looked at the lineup and I was like, this is like
the fact that we don't have Judge or Ohtani or
just terrible, man.
Bryce Harper. Yeah,
like,
a little disappointing.
At this point, just put minor leaguers in it. Like, honestly, at this point, it might be more entertaining.
I think Gunnar Henderson's out to win it, though. You still always have like one or two guys that come in with
Yeah.
the goal of winning it, and that can make it
Like
interesting. But we
Ellie
could
De La
talk about,
Cruz. Ellie De La Cruz would have been amazing too.
yeah. Yeah, we could talk more about that. All-star snubs. We could talk about the United States men's national team coaching situation, Bronny's struggles in the summer league. But we got football previews to
We
knock out,
do.
Ben.
We do.
Rocking with the Big 12 in college football and the AFC West in the NFL
Mm-hmm.
shortly after.
And we're gonna stick with the same format, people. It worked, and we've
Same
got some
format did
comments that people
work.
liked it. So we'll talk about the crappy teams. Sorry if your team's in the crappy section. It's just a reality. There's no hard feelings over here. Just
We
a reality.
also crazy that we're doing the Big 12 today. Brett Yormark is working hard to try to get Florida State, Clemson, possibly Notre Dame and Miami to join the conference
Okay.
too as early as next year.
I will say this: if Notre Dame joins the Big 12, then they're weaker than I could ever imagine.
They should be in the ACC or the Big 10. If they're
Like
joining a conference, the Big 12
you've
is, oh my
literally
gosh.
you've literally been like offered by the Big Ten for like what 30 years to be like, hey, come join our conference,
So many
and you've been
times.
so scared to because you'd be like, let's be honest, they go to the Big Ten, they would go from like a 10-3 team to like 8-4. You know, like man, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I get really frustrated when I hear about Notre Dame going to any other conference outside the Big Ten. Like you're located in Indiana. Like you're literally in the center of Big Ten. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're surrounded by Big Ten schools. Uh, I mean, congrats to the Big 12. I mean, we've said it all along. It's going to become a Big Three conferences. I think the
Oh
ACC
yeah,
is
the
holding.
ACC.
ACC, I think, is they have to pull something big, whether that's just convincing Florida State or they have to do something because the Big 12, I think, is more appealing because I think, more overall in sports in general, they have a lot better, I think, teams. But I just think the ACC might be folding. I think you're going to I think you're going to end up seeing a Big Three. And I think Oregon State and Washington State will end up joining the Big 12. I think you'll just see a Big Three. I think you'll see a Big Three, and then you'll see all the little small conferences. But
Yeah.
that's
The
what
private
I think is going to
equity
happen
that
here.
Yormark's talking about for the schools in his conference, plus the ACC being locked in that like 20-year-old TV contract that's like so far behind everybody else's now.
Yeah.
It's not going to end well.
Yeah.
But Big 12 added some new teams last year. They
Yes, they
also
did.
got some new teams coming on this year too, which is going to be interesting. But yeah, we'll kind of kick it off with the teams that I expect to be at the bottom. We'll see if you're on the same page as me with some of these, but
Yes.
absolutely no shot to win the conference or the playoffs / rebuilding, working on things. I'm kicking mine off with Houston.
Yeah, yeah. I think Houston for me. I made the list earlier. I gotta find it on my phone here. Yeah, I made the list earlier. I I, I think Houston's there. I think they maybe could be on the edge depending on obviously how the season goes. But I think surprisingly, I'll say this before we get into it. I think the Big 12 will be a lot more competitive than I think people realize. I don't think there's one team that can win the Big 12. I don't. Now that Texas and Oklahoma are gone, I think I have at least four teams that can compete for the title. Um, but yeah, I think Houston's one of those teams that they just need a lot of help. Like, and I've always
Yeah.
felt Houston is like in basketball, the same thing. I think they're always like right here. Like they need like that extra step. Like just they need either someone to give a lot of money or they need to like honestly move conferences. Like I think Houston is a team that like they fit the Big 12 because of where they're located, but like the
Geography wise,
size of
yeah.
it just they never seem to have the extra edge that I think they always wanted. They had Holgerson for a while, who I thought was going to do good. Herman, like I just feel like they've always had that close enough, but not to the tier that they need to be. And I know they're both offense and defense is not going to be great this year, and that's the question: is can they somehow have a surprise turnaround?
Yeah, going through a coaching change, trying to adjust to the new level of competition that they got. I would expect Houston, though, at least they're figuring out on the basketball court. Like,
Yeah, true.
as far as the regular season goes, I would expect them to also start figuring out on the football field. Houston in the Big 12 just sounds right, and there's no reason why
And they're in a
they
great
should be at the bottom of
location.
the
They're in
conference forever.
Houston.
Yeah.
Like they're in a football heaven down there in Texas. Like they you shouldn't be struggling to recruit. Even if you don't get the top four guy, 4 or 5 stars, you still get a lot of 3 stars and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Oh, this is one that I wouldn't have expected to be here, but I think I'm going to. And that's also one of the newcomers from last year, and that is Cincinnati.
Oh yeah, but I actually was going to have them first because Cincinnati has proven what I said, Josh, even last year. Like Cincinnati left way too soon. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, yeah, they had a great, obviously it was off of going to the playoff, but it's kind of like Liberty. Like, if Liberty has another good year this year, and maybe like, do they try to leave and go to the ACC or whatever it might be? I just think that if you're Cincinnati, like, again, it's kind of like Houston. Like, first off, it doesn't really make sense to go to Big 12, but that's another story for another day. I know they don't want to go to the Big 10 because you have Ohio State, and that's just like they're always going to be looking up to Big Brother, and I know that's part of the reason why they didn't want to go. But I don't know about you, Josh, but to me, I just felt Cincinnati proved last year that they're just not ready for like Power Four football.
Out of the
Maybe
new
that's just
teams
me.
that, out of the
Maybe
new
that's just
teams that
me.
came in, UCF was the only one that made a bowl game actually, but
Yeah.
Cincinnati was one of those programs. It's like Luke Fickell was building them up. They make the college football playoff, and then he leaves, and they bring in Scott Satterfield, and they just fall off a cliff in the Big 12 with the new level of competition. And I think the pieces, like, you can win at Cincinnati. We've
Yeah,
seen
you can.
Cincinnati
Yeah, for
be a good
sure.
team, but it is going to be harder now being in the Big 12. And I think last year just kind of showed that, like, what a drastic turn of events. Finished
Do
three and
you
nine
feel
last year.
and like do you think that's part of the reason why they like because I know the Big Ten had talks with them. I just think that the part of the reason they didn't go to the Big Ten is because they have to have a high they would have Ohio State in the same state. And I know some schools when they shift to conferences, they don't like being in the same state as a team that's like your big brother. Does that make sense? I feel like they're
Yeah,
like, we want to have our own story. And it's like, that's great. But I think their brand of football is more Big Ten-ish rather than Big 12-ish,
me
if that
too.
makes sense. Like, I think it's more of
Yeah,
like that, hey, we're going to play some decent defense. Our offense is not going to be great, but it's going to be good enough, kind of like an Iowa, Northwestern, Illinois. And I think that's like, I think Cincinnati, if they're in the Big Ten, they might be more low middle pack. Whereas in the Big 12, I just don't see them getting out. I don't see them getting higher than 14 in the conference. I really don't. I just, I look at their roster. I looked at it before I got on here, and there's nothing that it just seems like there's a lot of rebuilding, and it feels like we're saying this about Cincinnati the last couple of years, and it just needs to change. I think.
yeah. Oh, this will be a fun one to discuss, I think. Where do you have Colorado?
You
A
see,
newcomer to the conference.
this is the thing. Part of me, and this is where I have them on the line because I know there's a lot of people, including people at EA, college football video game. People listen. They're not the whatever the 12th best team in football. I'm sorry, that's a whole other story. But um, I don't have them. I have them more on the line of like they have like a chance. Does that make sense? Like what was our second level? I forget what we called it last week.
Second level's like exciting,
Yes, exciting. Yes, I have
but
them.
maybe not ready to contend
Yes,
yet.
I have them there, but I easily could see them in this bottom 4 or 5 of the league. Look, I'm not sold that Dion has a team that is able to compete at the highest level. I'm not sold on it. Like, I love Shadur. I think Shadur is going to be a great quarterback. I think he's a great prospect. I think Travis Hunter is a freak. But dude, when you're taking over half of your roster and you're flipping it every year, it's hard for me to sit here and go, this team is going to win 10 games, 9 games, 8 games. Maybe they're going to prove us wrong, Josh. But even when they were undefeated last year, we both said on this podcast, like,
They still
I'm
got to
not
play
sure about
USC. They
this.
still got to play Oregon. They
Exactly.
still got to play.
So
Yeah,
it is an easier conference now that they're in a conference with not really a ton of firepower, but their defense is still going to be bad. And I think their offensive line is still going to be bad. And I'm really struggling to find. I have them more at like a 6-win mark. I think they make a bowl game, but I don't see them in the echelon that a lot of people see them in. I think it's kind of like a Bronny James effect. It's like they just got a bunch of hype, and they're gonna get hype whether they're 4-8 or they're 7-3. You know,
hmm
so for me, I think they're going to be more on that. I think kind of even in this low tier, I could see them putting there as well. Again, that's where I'm at. I don't know about you.
I was curious. Yeah, I think that they will probably end up being in like that second level, the exciting but not ready to contend yet, just because of the Dion effect. Shadur and Travis Hunter are going to be the best quarterback wide
Yeah,
receiver
for sure.
duo in this conference. Um,
They
but you're
got they
right.
got and they got
Half,
a high state running back, so always hyped about that.
of course. But again, they're doing exactly what they did the year before. I
Yep.
think they lost 40 something kids, most notably Cormani McLean, but also are bringing in like 40 plus more
And there's a lot of
transfers.
there's a lot of mixed bag with them. Is like you have some former players saying that it was a crap situation there. Then you have others that say, hey, it's nothing against them. I just wanted more playing time. It's like I can't get a vibe, man. Like I just can't figure out like what is it actually, you know?
Yeah, it's tough to say. But yeah, Colorado might be in that second. But I was curious if you might have him in that
It
lower
was
one.
close. It's on the line. It's teetering.
Okay. Yeah. So another one at the bottom here. What do you think about Arizona State?
Yeah, I had them at the bottom here. Arizona State was
Me
another
too.
team. I think they I think that the penalty of recruiting, I believe they got a penalty for recruiting, correct? If I'm
From
remember right.
Herm Edwards'
Yeah.
tenure, yeah.
I think that whole situation and it just hurt them a lot. And like Arizona State is like a team that you like want them to be good. And I don't know why. It's just maybe it's the Sun Devil, maybe it's like the cool vibes they have. They always have sick jerseys. Like I always thought the Arizona State, but it's like, you know, they had the Pat Tillman statue. Like they just seem like a team that should just be like always like competing, but they haven't won a conference title since like the 90s, and they haven't won a national. They technically won a national title back in the 70s. So it's like they haven't been relevant in a really long time, and I don't see a trajectory where they are. And maybe that's just me, but I really struggle to see a trajectory where they are on the up and up. I have them more at like the 5-win mark this year, maybe four, five, six, but I'm more leaning towards 4 or 5. And again, I think that they finished in the top, the bottom 5 of this conference. I just don't see them climbing out very easily.
Yeah. Some of those recruiting things are tough, but Kenny Dillingham took over last year, most notably, I think the youngest coach in the
Yeah.
FBS. Very young dude.
Which is hard, people don't realize how hard that is to be a younger guy and have them respect you.
Yeah, but does know what he's doing to an extent. Offensive coordinator at Oregon beforehand, did really well over there with their
He
staff.
doesn't have much talent help. That's the problem.
Yeah, yeah, gotta get talent in the building. I feel like Arizona State should be a place that you'd think would be easy to recruit to,
And
but
they're
obviously that
just
hasn't
bad
been the
in a lot of
case.
sports right now. They're just bad in a lot
Yeah,
of sports.
tough to be in Arizona State Sun Devil right now. But I think the other one that I had in this category, the last one I'll include, there might be two actually. What do you think about TCU and BYU? I think they're right on the edge.
They're both on the edge for me. I don't have either of them in this. I think TCU maybe more than BYU. I think BYU they always somehow get like 7 wins. I don't know. Like I feel like anytime you've watched BYU in the past, you know what I mean? Like in the Mountain West, you like look up and it's like, oh, BYU has 8 wins. Like how does that possible? They're not that great. You know, maybe it's Joseph Smith doing some magic. I don't know. No one got that joke. But TCU, man, it's crazy about TCU because they went from being like national championship game to
Yeah.
like this year, people are predicting they win like 5 games. So I think TCU's more on this borderline, but again, it's kind of like Colorado for me. TCU could maybe just get a few good wins. And again, if you're beating the 4 bad teams in the conference, if you have a good schedule, then you help yourself. But I don't know if I have either of them necessarily in that bottom tier, but I think they're right there on the line, at least for my perspective.
Yeah, TCU went from like acquiring a lot of talent, having a lot of experience, making that national
NIL killed
championship
them.
game.
That's what it did.
It might have, because then you go into the next year and I mean they lost almost all their starters
Yeah.
because of graduation and to the draft and stuff. And I mean TCU, I'm not going to say it's hard to recruit there, but there's just a school like that is just hard once you lose a lot of talent because you don't
Yeah.
reload every year like the Texas, Alabamas, and Georgias can just replace that talent. So once you get like a good group of players to come through and they all leave, it's going to take a while before you can like accumulate talent and get back to that level. And it was even that way when Gary Patterson was a head coach. This
But even their
might not even
defense is
just be
not
a Sonny Dykes
yeah.
thing.
But even like they don't have a defense. Like they don't. Like they just I mean they have it's even that championship year, like they just don't have a defense. So for me, that's like I feel like the new Big 12 maybe is not as maybe it still is offensive heavy, but I feel like there's a lot better teams defensively. I think you like in this day and age of college football, man, you get to the playoff, like, you got to be able to play defense, against the highest states of the world and Alabama's, Georgia's, all those teams. So that's my other concern. That's why I look at a lot of these teams. If they're on this bottom tier, is most likely the defense is not necessarily there.
Yeah, and then BYU's like you could probably put them in either one for me. A lot of the same reasons you said. They just seem to somehow just stay
They just
consistent.
squeak it
Eight,
out,
seven
man.
wins.
They
Went
just
five and
squeak it
seven
out.
last year in the new conference, and then they had that one off year in COVID where they had Zach Wilson. They went like 11-1 or something like that.
Yeah,
But I think they're going through some coaching change over there too, so
yeah.
maybe something to keep an eye on. But yeah, BYU, I think in the Big 12 with that competition, just the way that with the Mormon ties and the way they got to recruit and stuff, I think it's going to be harder to compete in a big conference like
And
this
it's
for
hard
them
too because
every year.
if guys leave for like their service that they have to do, their missionary service, then that can throw a wrench in your plans. Like a lot of times you don't know when they're going to do it because some guys will do it in the middle of their time. They'll play 2 years
Right.
and they're gone for 2 years. Ohio State, they had a guy that was Mormon and he actually postponed his until after his graduation. So, but like, what I'm saying? Like, you never know with some of these, especially with
Yeah.
the Mormon schools. But another team I wanted to talk to you about that I thought that for me was close to this tier was Baylor. I feel
Baylor,
like,
I put in the exciting category.
yeah,
Even though they went 3-9 last year, I think Dave Aranda is going to perform
yeah,
under
I do
pressure.
too. I think Baylor got the biggest sigh of relief when Texas and Oklahoma left because this now
Hmm.
gives Baylor more of that like, oh, we can compete. And so I guess with that we can transition, I guess, to the next tier. I guess
Yeah, that next
exciting.
tier, yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about Baylor because Baylor, I mean, when me and you were in high school, man, like Baylor was like that was like the team that was exciting,
Yeah.
RG3. When I was in high school, man, like that's like what every high schooler wanted to model their game after. But since then, they've just had ups and downs. They've been good some years where they win 10 games, and then they've had some bad years. Last year was a bad year. I don't know what their schedule's looking like, but I feel like they're going to be a 6-win team this year. And I don't know why. I looked at the returning on defense, and their defense is always solid. I think their defense is going to be a little bit better than it was last year. I think their offense, they got to figure some things out, but figure out a quarterback situation. But I think they're going to be all right.
Yeah, the Baylor football schedule. I'll go ahead and tell it to you right now. I'll pull it up. We've got Tarleton State, then we got
Win.
Utah, Air Force,
Loss.
Colorado,
Loss.
BYU,
Yeah, win.
Iowa State, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, TCU, West Virginia, Houston, and Kansas.
They might get 6 wins. I think they can get 6 wins.
Yeah,
I think so.
It's like you said. So this is how last season went. They lost 7 of 8 home games, or
You can't
losing
do that.
7 of 8 home games.
You can't do that.
Yeah, ended last year on a 5-game losing streak too. So
there's one thing I've learned in college football, Josh, is you can't lose your home games.
Yeah,
You just can't.
those are the ones that gotta, like, if everything's like even, you gotta like take. I guess you get the home field advantage there. But Baylor is one of those schools. I mean, they've had some exciting teams over there. The Bryce Petty days, the Robert Griffin days, the Matt Rule days, and they played in a Big 12 conference championship not too long ago. Like,
Yeah.
I think that they got to be due for like a better season coming up here. So that's kind of why they're in my exciting ones. Just like, let's see how Dave Aranda responds. They just had one of the worst seasons I've seen Baylor have.
I mean, I think this is like he's got to fix it. I just Baylor's one of those schools that can get a lot of money into that school, and like there's the board that probably doesn't have much patience now with Texas gone. Like we want to be the king of Texas, right? And I think that's the way Baylor has to look at it. Is like, hey, TCU is not great, Texas Tech is definitely not great, but hey, let's try to do this.
Yeah, so they could very well easily be one of the bottom teams in the conference again if Dave doesn't get it done. But for those reasons, I got them in like that exciting tier. And since you just mentioned them, how about Texas Tech?
Man, I wanted to put them in the bottom, man, because I don't know, man. I watched them last year, and man, sometimes they made me cringe, man. And maybe it's just Texas Tech. I don't know. I've never understood Texas Tech after Patrick Mahomes. Like before that, it was just like you watch Texas Tech and you're like, what am I watching? Sometimes, like, what am I watching? And maybe it's just because they've just been bad for the last few years. They haven't been great. But yeah, I have them exciting. I think they'll win like maybe 5 or 6 games, maybe 7. I don't know. Texas Tech is one of those schools that surprises all of us sometimes, and then they're also either bad or good. There's not really any in between.
Yeah, I thought last year was that season that Texas Tech might have been able to break out because they had some momentum building from the year before. They had a favorable schedule, but it just didn't play out that way. I think 7-6 was like their final record. Joey McGuire's had to go through a lot of turnover there on that roster, but he does have Taj Brooks at running back, who is a preseason All-American. His quarterback,
he's a good dude.
Yeah, Baron Morton could be breaking out at quarterback. We'll see what happens there. I'm going to go ahead and check their schedule out. I can't imagine it's going to be just as favorable as last year, but we'll go ahead and see what.
Which is always what happens, by the way. It's like Florida, right?
Yeah, right. Out of conference looks favorable. They got to play ACU, Washington State, and North Texas.
ACU? What is that? Is that like a boot camp? ACU? Is that Abilene Christian?
Let me go ahead and tell you. Abilene Christian, yeah.
Look at that. Look at Ben Bowden right there. That is just called genius right there. Knowing my schools.
So out of conference, I feel like those are all 3 winnable. And then they also get to kick it off with Arizona State and Cincinnati in conference.
They could go 5-0.
Possible 5-0, 4-1 start there. Then they got Arizona, which we'll talk about them. I think they're going to be tough. But then Baylor and TCU possibly win at
least one there. So they go to 6 wins. At least get to 6 wins.
Then you got Iowa State, Colorado, Oklahoma State, West Virginia.
They might get to 6. I see them getting to like 6, maybe 7 if they get lucky, but I think 6 is kind of where I see them capping.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah, so the schedule does look a little favorable.
It's tougher. It's tougher at the end, which is always the rough part. If your schedule's tough at the end, that's just not fair. It's just like I've seen Ohio State so many times where they go like 7-0 and then they just have a brutal stretch at the end.
And as a fan base, you hate to be like 6-3, looking at looking at possible bowl. I mean, you are in a bowl because of the 6 wins, but then you lose the last 3 and you're 6-6.
Wasn't it Kansas like 2 years ago? It was like 6-0. They're like all their fan base is crazy, and then they lost 6 straight. Yeah, and it was like 6-6.
Yeah, Jalen Daniels went down, and they just didn't maintain the same momentum. Yeah,
which I get it. Like as an Ohio State fan, I've been there where it's like it looked great, and then they faced Michigan 3 years ago, and it was awful. Like because you forget about the tough games at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go with Iowa State.
I also have them in this sector.
I think people have been waiting for Matt Campbell to do something here for a while. I think he missed his wave.
Man. Yeah, he missed his wave.
His first 2 or 3 years at Iowa State were new and exciting, and then he was getting like all the big coaching offers and interviews, and he
should have
left.
Nope, I've said he should have left like a while ago. I said that like he should have left.
If the goal was to get to one of these big time I
just don't think he wants to. I just don't think he wants to coach at a big time school. Like I just don't. I think he's okay with being at an Iowa State. Maybe that's
he might be like there's people like him, like Mark Stoops, that seem to just be fine at Kentucky. Like they do well at Kentucky for Kentucky. The fan base is reasonable. Yeah. I feel like the Iowa State fan base is reasonable, but yeah, it's
a hard place to play. By the way, playing at Iowa State is not fun.
Trying to live in Iowa's got to be hard too. Boring, but. Anyway, yeah, I think Iowa State has the most returning starters this year.
Do you think that he gets on his contract, like one of the bonuses is like they give him extra money for the fact that he has to live in Iowa? It's like an extra 100,000 because he's like, you have to suffer through Iowa. Sorry that anybody that lives in Iowa. I've been through Iowa like you got to know it
if you live in Iowa.
It's just boring, man. There's nothing.
I've been out there too.
Unless you're in a big city, man, there is nothing to do. And again, in the comments, let us know if there's something to do. But every time I've gone, it's been boring. So I don't know. That's just me.
Yeah, I think most of their starters are back. I think they had the most returning starters in college football. So returning production.
They always have a sneaky offense, man. Every year they always have a sneaky offense, and it's wild to me.
Yeah, so Iowa State, we'll see if they can do something. I know that a team that wins 7 games and everybody's back might not be the most exciting. It doesn't guarantee that it's going to take a step forward, but you never know. There's at least consistency there, and we've seen consistency, especially in the transfer portal era, be somewhat important sometimes.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Exciting. Maybe Matt Campbell will eventually build something, that can contend over there. But for now, I think they're just in like that. You can't count them out. they're probably going to win 1 or 2 games they shouldn't, but they'll probably lose 1 or 2 games they shouldn't, and then it'll be around like 1 or 2 games above 500 maybe for them. Uh, I yeah. So one of the other teams I got in here is UCF. I think they will eventually be contending in this conference based
Oh,
on
I
the
think
way
so
that
too.
yeah, based on the way that Gus Malzahn can recruit over there, that he can just his offensive play calling over there, and adds KJ Jefferson in this year to replace John Reese Plumlee at quarterback, someone that he was excited to get over there. Like I said earlier, the only former G5 team to enter the conference and make a bowl game last year. I think 9-5 was their final record last year, and I would look for them to continue to build on that and establish themselves as one of the legit like year-to-year contenders in this conference. I don't think they're there quite yet.
They got a great running back duo too. Their running back
Yeah.
duo is nice.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I think of UCF right now. You got anything to add to that? Running
Yeah,
back
I think,
duo is going to be nice. Yeah,
dude, the running back duo is nice. Gus Malzahn, as much crap as he's gotten over the years, like he's in a perfect place at UCF. He doesn't have a ton of pressure from the school itself, and he can just do what Gus does best, and it's just create amazing offenses. And I see them winning like 8-9 games. Again, I agree with you. I don't think they're at the pinnacle yet of the Big 12. But I think after this year, then if they have another good year of a 9-win season, I think you have to go. Yeah, they're a top team in the Big 12, and then you could start talking about playoff and then from there on out. But this is where I think they need to take that step of like, hey, where we are consistent, we are legit.
yeah. RJ Harvey, by the way, the running back last year, 1,400 yards, third in the record books for the school.
That's nuts. People don't realize how hard 1,400 yards is. I know that we see that a lot in like NFL and stuff, but like, dude, it's hard to run for 1,400 yards in this day and age when there's a lot of passing attacks and stuff, man. Like,
Right.
it's just cool to see.
The last team I have in this category is West Virginia. Kind of a surprise 9-win season last year for them. I've always felt like West Virginia, I mean, they're one of the teams that we as kids grew up watching and loved and thought there was some good history there. But then you follow that up with the Geno Smith era with, high-powered offense, and then it's just been like not that great. Also in a weird conference, the Big 12. Speaking of geography, West Virginia has so much travel time.
I feel like more like a Big 10 school.
Big 10 or ACC, but there's so much travel time that you got to do to get out to, that Great Plains area. Yeah, and I feel like that has to take a toll on a team at some point. But yeah, surprised everybody with 9 wins last year. And this year, I'm interested to see if that is something that they build upon or if it was just a one-off season to go back to like being the West Virginia teams that we've seen more recently.
Yeah, and I think we both agree that a lot of teams that are in this are teams that we have to see be consistent before we can bump them up to the next tier. And I think West Virginia is one of those teams where until we see that progress, I think it's tough. And again, West Virginia, like the experience of West Virginia itself is amazing. I mean, they have a musketeer shoot a musket every time they score, which is just dope. I'm sorry. That's just amazing. They sing Country Roads, which I found out from someone that lives in Virginia. It's not actually about West Virginia. It's about West in Virginia, not West Virginia, which is a fun fact.
Interesting.
So now I feel betrayed by everyone that told me it was West Virginia when he sings that song. So all you West Virginia fans. Virginia. So I guess he's saying like west of Virginia, but he just says West Virginia. But I guess there's some people that from Virginia have told me this, so I have to believe the people that that supposedly the song's about. So. But anyways,
the other reason that
their jerseys are also sick, by the way. I love West Virginia's jerseys. I just think they're really cool.
Me too. The other thing that makes West Virginia exciting to me is I think they got one of the hardest schedules in the conference.
Oh boy!
Even out of conference, they got to play Penn State and Pitt.
Ooh.
Albany will be the gimme game, but in conference, I think you're playing all the contenders that we're getting ready to talk about. You're playing Kansas, you're playing Oklahoma State, you're playing Kansas State, you're playing Arizona, and you're playing UCF.
Ooh. Yeah,
we're going to see what this team's made of.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. No, I think too with West Virginia is like you said, they've never seemed to get over that hump since the Pat White era, right? Like I feel
that was peak.
That's what I'm saying. Like I don't even Geno Smith. I feel like they never really got the hump over there. Like I think they have to have consistent years to build that up because I think West Virginia is a fun place to go play football. Like it's a unique place, but it's a great football area. Southern Ohio, the western part of West Virginia. It's a great little area for football. And yeah, I think everyone wants to see West Virginia thrive again. And I think Pat McAfee wants to see West Virginia thrive, which is so funny to think Pat McAfee went to West Virginia, but
Yeah.
it is really cool though.
All right, we got 5 more teams to talk about. So
Yes.
why don't we go ahead and kick this contenders section
Yes.
off with Oklahoma State.
Yes, Oklahoma State's got the best running back in college football, hands down. No one can debate
I think
me that.
that's where you got to start.
Listen,
Yep.
listen, I'm an Ohio State fan. Now, I do believe Ohio State has the best duo in college football because I think Travion Henderson and Judkins is the best duo. But if I had a chance between Travion Henderson and Judkins versus Ollie Gordon, sorry, I'm taking Ollie Gordon. Now, he did just have a DUI, and when they asked Gundy about what his punishment was, he said they're going to just run him 50 times, and that's his punishment, which I don't know how I take that because it's like I don't know how serious they're, you know what I mean? Like that made me feel a little weird, but again, I guess it's what star status gives you. But yeah, Ollie Gordon is a freak, and to be honest, if that's all they did is run them with Ollie Gordon, I think they'd be fine. Like he's probably gonna have 1,700 yards rushing this year. I'm guessing like 20 touchdowns. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much where I start there. Again, their defense is gonna be okay. Their offense is always gonna be good, but Ollie Gordon, that's pretty much my answer.
Yeah, Oklahoma State to me, now that Texas and Oklahoma are out, in the Mike Gundy era, which I think he took over in 05, they've won 1 conference title. And that could be very in large part because Texas and Oklahoma were dominant over there. They've always kind of been the little brother to Oklahoma, going back to what you talked about with big brother and little brother rivalries. It seems like anytime Mike Gundy that does get a good coordinator in there, they always get poached by a bigger school or they become a head coach somewhere
Like
else.
Knowles.
Yeah.
State.
But they've always been an exciting team with like big superstars. They've had people like Justin Blackman,
but never
come
a running
Des
team,
Bryant
which is
come
crazy
through.
to me. That's
they've taken on a new identity. Yeah,
which
they've
is
taken
so
on a new
crazy.
identity. Like they've had some more like gritty defenses in the Jim Knowles era, and they've taken on like more of a run threat.
Gundy's not a guy
attack.
that does that.
Right. So maybe that's just him finally being willing to evolve. But Oklahoma State, excited to see, I guess, how they rise in this conference now. But also, I mentioned returning production earlier. They're second in the country in returning production. 85% of it's back on a team that won 10 games last year. So I think you look at that, like not a lot of turnover, a lot coming back from a team that won double-digit games last year. And I think just like last year, the schedule's pretty favorable for them again. Let me go ahead and read it to you. Kicking it off with home games against San Diego State and Arkansas out of conference. You go to Tulsa for your last out of conference game. And then you get to host Utah. That'll be their toughest game, but at least it's at home. Then you go to Kansas State. That'll be a tough back-to-back. Get to host West Virginia. Then from there, you go to BYU, to Baylor, host Arizona State, go to TCU, host Texas Tech, go to Colorado.
They have an easy end of the schedule for sure.
Yes. I see
which I totally would prefer, especially in this new playoff era. I'd love to have an easy schedule where you can start benching guys early and give them rest.
I definitely see 9 wins here, and if they're all that I think they could be cracked up to be, I think they could have 10 wins as well.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I always loved, for some reason when I used to play, speaking of college football video games, I loved playing the air raid, which is just so weird for me now to see Oklahoma State like with a running back that's going to carry it 30 times. Like you never, like growing up, I think you can agree with me. Growing up, you never saw Oklahoma State running the ball like 20 times in a game, let alone 30 times with one guy. So that makes it fun too, is to get to see a team that's a new identity. And again, kind of like Ohio State, they got a new identity in defense, and now you see Oklahoma State with a new identity in offense.
For sure. Let's go to another team that I think we've mentioned them already a couple times, Kansas. Jalen Daniels needs to stay healthy.
Who would have thought that, let's say 4 years ago, you and I be sitting here going, hey, Kansas is going to be a top team in the Big 12 in football. No one ever thought. Basketball, for sure. Football, never would have thought that when Les Miles was dealing with it. Like, it's just mind-boggling to say that Kansas is a top team. Again, if Jalen Daniels stays healthy, it's there's a lot of different things because I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. And yeah, Kansas could win the Big 12. I can't believe I'm saying that, but here we are. We are alive.
They were my dark horse to win it last year, but again, Jalen Daniels only played 3
Can't stay
games, and
healthy,
so
man.
I wish that guy could. I wish that guy could. I feel like we're missing out on a lot of potential there. But Lance Leipold has 30 seniors on this year's team,
That's
and
good, man. That's
they
good to
did win
have.
9 games
Yeah.
last year, even without Jalen Daniels. So
This
Jason
might be
Bean,
their
credit to
year, man.
him.
This might have to be their only year because losing 30
If there
guys.
was a year, this I think would be it.
Yeah.
We also need that defense to continue to step up too, because that first year where they kind of broke out, the offense was ranking super high across the country in all the major categories, but it was the defense that was holding them back. And in typical Big 12 fashion, yeah, you got a high-powered offense, not so good defense. I would like to see that take a step forward. What else was I going to say? Oh yes, Devin Neal, likely to
He's a
become the
freak, dude.
Jayhawks all-time leading rusher this year too. He's back as well. A lot of familiar pass catchers on the offensive line too. Logan Allen was transferring in from Wisconsin last year, former 5-star, but he missed most of the season, if not the whole season, and he will be back anchoring the offensive line. So that's going to be not a brand new, but newer face to the team as well. Secondary also has Kobe Bryant and Mello Dotson. They should be some of the Big 12's best corners. So that's 2 guys right there that you look to, I guess, to anchor a hopefully improved defense.
Yeah.
But I'll go ahead and finish this off with reading the Kansas schedule to here too. Let me go ahead and pull that up real quick. See what we think this squad can do. If I think Lance Leipold did sign a extension recently, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
I was gonna say if they actually do something this year and become a playoff team, would this be the year that he maybe leaves? But if he just extended, maybe he's here for the long run, really trying to win at Kansas. I don't know. But all right, out of conference, you're kicking it off with Lindenwood, Illinois, and UNLV.
Should be all 3 wins.
I think so. Then you got at West Virginia, host TCU,
win.
At Arizona State,
win.
Host Houston,
win.
You go to Kansas State. That'll be interesting.
Tough.
Host Iowa State.
Win.
Then you go to Baylor, or not Baylor, BYU.
Win.
Host Colorado, and then finish at Baylor. So
I see them going
stretch this season
10-2. 10-2. That's why I see going in the regular season 10-2.
Yeah, I think the big ones that you'll have to I guess
they'll
worry
probably
about
lose to Kansas State because Kansas State sucks to play at. If I've heard that from so many people, and you never would think that, but I guess it's a really hard place to play.
Kansas State and West Virginia, those could be the 2 games that get them, but we'll see what happens. And since you just brought them up, let's talk Kansas State because they're building something over there too. I feel
lost their quarterback to the Ohio State University. Yes,
did they lose him, or did they tell him to leave because Avery Johnson is him?
Listen, no. Let's just say they lost him, so it makes me feel better that we didn't just waste a spot on the roster. Okay, that's what
we'll talk more about that in the Big Ten preview when it's a little more relevant. But all that to say, Kansas State feels good about Avery Johnson, nevertheless, regardless of what the Will Howard situation was. So
they are going to miss, though, 250 pounds running full steam ahead at defenses, though. I think they will miss that.
Yeah. And the offensive line is going to hold up because I believe there's a lot of turnover over there as well.
They've honestly had a really good defense. Coordinator. They've had a good defense the last few years as well. I feel like their defense has been not great, but for the Big 12 standard, it's been a good defense.
Yeah, that's something they've been able to rely on. Let's see. And DJ Giddens ran 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns last year.
I forgot they had him too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good running, good skill all around. 3 main receivers return: Jaden Jackson, J.C. Brown, and Keegan Johnson. And they also add Dante Cephas from Penn State. They have 4
really good.
This is the big one though. 4 multi-year starters depart from the offensive line.
We've learned anything in college football, Josh. If you don't have a veteran offensive line, you are struggling.
Yeah, even at Alabama, like we saw new guys on the offensive line over there and how tough it was just to get the ball snapped sometimes, just trying to get everybody on the same page. But I think those are the things to point to. New offensive coordinator, young but talented quarterback, new faces on the offensive line all over the place.
Yeah.
I think everything else I feel pretty good about, but if Kansas State was to underachieve, I think it's one of these areas, and maybe they're finishing more like 8-4. I think that's their floor, though. I can't imagine them going much worse than this. We'll go ahead and check the schedule out right now.
Yeah, I think they're like a 9-3 team. They're always solid, so I don't. Yeah.
I think if all those things check out, I think they could be winning this conference, or at least playing in the championship game.
Yeah.
But that is a lot of big areas to be worrying about. So they've got out of conference UT Martin and Tulane. Tulane's been one of the better G5 teams lately, so I don't think we can just call that an automatic win.
Yeah.
You get Arizona at least at home. You go to BYU. You get to host Oklahoma State at least. That's 2 tough games so far. They're at least on their home field. They go to Colorado, and then they got to go to West Virginia, host Kansas. Again, that's at least a home game, but still.
Yeah.
Then you go to Houston, host Arizona State, host Cincinnati, finish at Iowa State. So an easy stretch at the end of the season. But they do play some of the bigger teams here. But I think Kansas State is up for it and will win a couple of these. Got to go at least 2-2 in that Arizona, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, Kansas stretch, I think.
Yeah, I'm going like 9-4, I think. 9-4. I mean, sorry, 9-3.
9-3 would be it, yeah.
Something like that. 9-3, 8-4, something like that.
So let's talk about one of these exciting newcomers coming over here, and that's the Arizona Wildcats. Who would have thought that they'd be winning 5 top 25 games last year, that they'd be in the position that they were under Jed Fish, who is now gone. New head coach taking over, Brett Brennan, I believe. But not a whole lot left with Jed Fish. He retained Noah Fifita, who was the quarterback that was taking the league by storm right after who was it? Jalen DeWall.
Yeah, I know who you're saying. I can't think of his name though.
I can't remember his last name either, but
yes,
I thought he was going to be exciting, and then he got hurt, and it was like, oh, what are we going to do now? And then this guy comes in, Noah Fifita.
Dude, Noah Fifita is phenomenal.
Yeah, very phenomenal, and he also kept his best pass catcher back. Let me go ahead and get his name. McMillan, 90 catches.
Yeah, McMillan's really good.
1,400 yards.
He was on my fantasy team. That's how I know he was good.
Brent Brennan also hired 2 big coordinators with Dino Babers and Dwayne Akina, who both were a part of the historic Arizona team that went 12-1 in 1998. So guys that have experience but also care about this school. Yep. So all that to say, Fifita last year completed 72% of his passes, 25 touchdowns to 6 picks. The offensive line is going to be a strength as well. They got a couple returning tackles back and a center and a guard. So I think that's 4 or 3 or 4 guys right there for the consistency purposes there. So, yeah, I would expect Arizona to be in this conference championship game. If not, they're like finishing 3rd.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're going to finish the top 3, maybe top 2, but for sure top 3. For sure, at least in my book.
Yeah. And in the long term, we'll see if Brent Brennan continues the momentum that Jed Fish did get over there. But schedule-wise, we've got New Mexico, Northern Arizona, both home games to kick the year off out of conference. Let me see here. Then we've got Arizona at Kansas State. We got them at Utah. We're hosting Texas Tech. We're at BYU. We're hosting Colorado, hosting West Virginia, at UCF, host Houston, at TCU, and hosting Arizona State.
Yeah. I don't see why not. They're in the top 3 at least, possibly in the championship game for this.
Yeah. Yeah, don't have to play Kansas. Don't have to play Oklahoma State. Just some of the other tough teams there. But that leaves us with Utah.
Your team,
I believe.
That you choose with every prediction, when it seems like when we predict.
I am the Utah, I wouldn't call it truther, but I am the closet Utah fan on this podcast. Yeah.
That is true.
I don't give up on them.
That is,
I've seen it too many
you
times.
literally don't. Like, I think I've tried to convince you, and you're like, no.
No, they
But
might be 0-2
they
right now,
should,
but they're
let's just
still a
say
top
this.
5 team in the country.
They should win this conference. Like, I think we both can agree on that. Like, they should win this conference. Don't you feel like? Like, when you
Yeah.
look at the talent they have, like, I don't see why not.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and bring up a couple Utah things to think about right here. So don't forget they were back-to-back Pac-12 champions before last
Yep.
season with all the injuries that Kyle Whittingham had to deal with, and some of those were to Cam Rising and Brant Kuth, who was one of the best tight ends in the country, but alongside Dalton Kincaid when he was healthy last. And Cam Rising, I think, is maybe older than you and I. I don't know. He's been around for
He's got to
quite a
be like
while.
29 for
Yeah,
sure.
but totally different brand of football than what the Big 12 is used to as well. So I think that could maybe shock some people
Physical,
too.
man. Physical.
Yeah. Defensively, always stingy. Even with all the injuries last year, they were 18th, I think, in points per game. Let me see if I can get you some stats. Yeah, 19 points per game, which tied for 18th in the nation, and always pride themselves in that defense. That's why you can't ever count them out. And from that defensive unit, they got 8 starters that are back. Got some other guys in the portal.
Always got great special teams too. Always got great special teams.
Cam Calhoun from Michigan, Keenan Johnson from Georgia Tech are coming over to help the secondary out as well. And like I said, Cam Rising, an experienced quarterback. You got Kuth back at tight end. They also brought in Dorian Singer from USC to help that receiving corps as well. So, yeah, I'm looking at Utah as the favorite here.
Oh,
Looks like you are feeling that way too.
Oh, yeah.
I'd be shocked if they do not come in and win this conference first year in here.
Oh, I would not be shocked if they start a run and they go 2 or 3 years in a row where they're starting to just own the conference. If they can keep up with recruiting, I think they're gonna be fine. Really do.
Me too. So let's just look at a snapshot here. The schedule here, we've got SUU. What do you think that stands for?
S what?
SUU.
Southern Utah University.
Well done.
Ben is on a roll today.
That is crazy. Yeah. So then they got Baylor, like we said.
I bet you didn't even know they existed.
Didn't. But now we know.
Now we have
Southern Utah University.
Back to the day.
Staying with the small schools in state, Utah State next. This is where it gets interesting. At Oklahoma State, host Arizona. Then they got at Arizona State, host TCU. At Houston, host BYU. At Colorado, host Iowa State. At UCF. So
on a personal note, I hope they just destroy Colorado at Colorado. Like, I just hope they go in there and beat them by like 30.
I think this, since I think Utah's a favorite, I think they're capable of going 12-0, but that's so hard to do. So
I think it's like 11-1.
I'm going ahead and saying 11-1.
They lose to like Oklahoma State is what I'm thinking.
Oklahoma State and Arizona is tough back to back, but from there, then you just got Arizona State, TCU, Houston, BYU, Colorado, Iowa State, UCF. Like most of those teams are in the bottom tier of the conference that we just talked about.
They'll be fine.
Yeah, so it could be. I think Utah is that good, but they're also going to have a benefit of definitely an easy end to the schedule there. So that's the Big 12.
That's the Big 12.
I think out of all the conferences, we'll continue to talk about these. I think this is the one that's like the most even, which is why it's so hard to pick some of these games. Like it's this so close in tier.
It's this in the MAC. It reminds me of a bigger version of the MAC. Just a bunch of teams that probably all have a chance of somewhat to put together a great season, to be honest.
Yeah. So that is college football talk for today. Moving on to the NFL, and I would love to go ahead and kick this off with the fact that Kansas City could be winning this division, I think, for the 9th consecutive year in a row.
Yeah.
But bigger than that, they're going to be looking to be the first team in the Super Bowl era to win 3 championships in a row. Tom Brady only won 3 out of 4 years.
That's true.
Not 3 in a row, but could Kansas City be the first? And it is very hard to do, but based on what you said last week about the AFC Championship game, it doesn't sound like you think so either. They're not even going to get into the game. But let's go ahead and start there at Kansas City. I think at least you got to say they're winning this division.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah,
Are we
for
in agreement
sure
on that?
Yeah, okay. I'm not. I'm just thinking like you said, it's so hard to win 3 in a row. Like it's hard enough to appear in the Super Bowl 3 years in a row, let alone winning it 3 years in a row. I just think that it feels like with these dynasties, right? The Golden State had it too, where you just have a year where it just maybe not going to completely be there. And again, I'm not saying that they are. I'm just saying I need to see more out of. I need to see them getting away from Travis Kelce a little bit, starting to implement more to Pacheco, to their receivers. Like, because let's be honest, Travis Kelce's what, 34? Like, he's not getting
Something
any
like that, yeah.
younger. And he's a great athlete, but I think that has to be more. And I think the defense, obviously, now again, I could be completely wrong. I think there's still a top 3 team in the AFC, a top 4 team in the NFL. I just think, again, as I see it now, maybe they don't make the championship game, but I do think they go like probably in the regular season 13-4, the 14-3, something like that, maybe 12-5 at the worst. But I see them winning this division. I don't think it's going to be very close, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think they're the clear favorite there. And wide receiver will be interesting this year outside of Kelsey because they did go out and get Marquise Brown, who I really like.
Yeah, I think he's great. Yeah.
They re-signed McCole Hardman, and of course drafted Xavier Worthy,
But they
fastest
don't
man
have
in.
a possession guy. That's the one thing I'm worried about. They have a bunch of, I feel like, speed demons, or as I say, getting the top off the ball. I think they need, outside of Travis Kelce, they need that other guy that can be like, a 6'4", 220-pound dude, that can just sit in there and get those extra yards when you need it, not just burners.
Yeah, they've really, I think, been looking for like that next Tyreek Hill, and I think
Yeah.
they thought they had it in Sky Moore, who they drafted a little
Yeah.
while ago, and that didn't work out. They make a trade for Kadarius Toney, and that ends up like not working out for them all that well either. And I mean, Marquise isn't exactly like that. He's more of a deep threat, but maybe Xavier Worthy could end up being that guy. He kind of was like that guy at Texas. They really liked him, obviously, made the trade for him with Buffalo. Still can't believe Buffalo let them go ahead and do that. But
We'll get
the
to
defense,
Buffalo for sure.
yeah, the defense last year, I think, was huge. Like that was probably the worst offensive Kansas City
Yes, for
Chiefs team we've
sure.
seen, but it was the best defensive. And
Yeah.
we saw how valuable Chris Jones was and why you pay that man in the Super Bowl. Made so many disrupting plays, getting after the quarterback. Um, so let's look at this Chiefs schedule right here. They kick it off with home games with Baltimore and Cincinnati. They go to Atlanta and the Chargers. They get to host the Saints. Then they're at San Francisco, at Las Vegas. Then they host Tampa Bay and Denver, at Buffalo, at Carolina, host Vegas and the Chargers. They're at the Browns, host the Texans, at Pittsburgh, at Denver to end the season.
Well, the Browns is a loss. No, I mean, I listening to that schedule. I mean, I see maybe 3 or 4 losses in there, maybe three
Yeah,
or
I
four.
mean
That's
the
kind of where
clear
I'm
cut
at.
big ones will be Houston, Cleveland, Buffalo, Tampa Bay. Love the Super Bowl matchup with San Francisco there, and then Baltimore and Cincinnati kick off the year ain't
Yeah.
going to be easy either. But
So I think
for
like
the
3 or
Chiefs,
4.
got to
I
win
think
some of
3 or
these.
4 probably.
Yeah. Uh, so this is where it could get interesting. Second, who's finishing second in this division, Ben?
Oh
For me, I'm
goodness.
saying the Chargers, even with all the new faces and turnover over there. But
Yeah, I'm. Hmm. Yeah, I'm leaning Chargers. I think this is tough though. I think
it is.
Chargers just because they have the better quarterback out of the last 3 teams. And I kind of think that when you have the best quarterback out of the last 3 teams, you kind of finish the second best team. But honestly, I feel like you coin flip with the second and third place between, I think, the Raiders and the Chargers. But I'm going to go Chargers. I think John Harbaugh. Wow, Jim Harbaugh. I think he did the right thing with is kind of bringing his mentality, and I think maybe that's going to help Justin Herbert not feel like the pressure is on him. Um, but again, I need to see more of that offense because it's really hard for me to believe that this offense is going to turn into a ground and pound. And it's hard for me to believe that this defense is going to stop teams, which we've seen in the past. They always haven't been able to do, even with some of the great pass rushers that they've had. So I'm going to say they're going to go, I think, like about a 10-6 mark, probably is where I think their cap is. But again, I love Justin Herbert. I hope that he gets some help around him.
Yeah, definitely going to take on a new identity, I think. No Keenan Allen, of course, no Mike Williams. They draft Lad McConkey. Um, Quentin Nelson is going to have to take a huge step forward. Very
Yeah.
disappointing rookie season that first year. But you do get Greg Roman in at coordinator. And if you are going to do
Did you say
ground
Quentin Nelson? Just,
Quentin
just.
Johnson, I'm sorry, Quentin Nelson, the
I was about to
guard
say,
for
I'm
the
like
Colts.
guard. I was like, what are we?
Quentin
Okay,
Johnson,
there we go.
Quentin
There we go.
Johnson. Thanks for the correction. Uh, if you are going to do ground and pound, I think it's going to be interesting watching him try to do that with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards.
Which I
I
just think is
think,
hilarious because neither of them are really ground and pound guys.
well, also J.K. has like two
Terrible
games combined
legs.
the last 2 years or something like
Yeah.
that. It's like, is he going to be like built for this? But I
I
guess we'll
love
see
the
what
I
happens.
love the
But
Ravens pipeline they've got going on over there too.
yeah, I think John might have been like, "Here you go, bud."
Take
We've
my
seen that.
unwanted.
We've seen Jim take some of some former Baltimore staff too at Michigan. I think
Like
McDonald's come through there.
repaying him.
Jesse
It's like
Minter
repaying
is
him.
from Baltimore. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, the Harbaugh system like that. But yeah, and then all things considered too, Justin Herbert's going to be the best quarterback out of the last three teams. So I think
Yes.
that has to mean something. So I'll go ahead and say the Chargers finishing second in this division. I think they actually got a pretty favorable schedule, if I remember correctly too. I'll go ahead and read that to you. So we've got kicking it off with home game against Vegas and then road games at Carolina and at Pittsburgh before you got to play Kansas City at home. You got your bye, and then you're at Denver, at Arizona, host New Orleans. You're at Cleveland, you host Tennessee, Cincinnati, and Baltimore. You're at Atlanta, at Kansas City, host Tampa, host Denver, at New England, at Vegas. I think it's pretty favorable.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I think 10 is probably where their cap is, probably. I see about 10 wins as their cap, and I think you might be able to get a wild card with that. Just depends on obviously the rest.
Yeah, 10 wins can definitely get you a wild card, and that's about where I would guess to the Chargers. So third for me, it sounds like you're on the same page too. I'm going Vegas.
Yes.
Vegas, I think, was very exciting at the end of the season
Got a good
last year.
defense.
Yeah, very good defense. Make the head coaching change to Antonio Pierce. And this time the Raiders actually decided to retain him as a head coach.
Smart.
We've seen a couple interims come through and not be retained that did better than the head coach. And I think this is one that the players really, really wanted. Max Crosby was very vocal about that. And then you saw the transition with the defense, especially, which is why they won some games at the end of the year that they probably shouldn't have. And they go out and get Christian Wilkins, who is going to definitely be a force with Crosby on that defensive line. I think the big questions here that the Raiders are going to be looking at is who's going to be playing quarterback because you got Aiden O'Connell and you got Gardner Minshew. And is one
Gardner
better than the
Minshew.
other?
You
I'm
need to,
not sure.
but put Gardner Minshew. He's more proven,
I'd
personally.
probably lean Minshew, yes. But unless you think Aiden O'Connell is a
You know for a
long-term
fact
solution,
they're just like waiting for Shadur Sanders because you know that fits Sanders perfectly. Him going to Las Vegas, that just
out in
fits
Vegas,
perfectly right there.
yeah,
You know it does.
it
Like you know
does.
they're waiting for him just to be sitting there.
Yeah. And then lastly, no Josh Jacobs. So is Zamir White going to be ready to be an RB1? Do
Supposedly
they
he's
have
ripped. So this is the rumor out
oh,
there is he's been working out. He's a big boy now.
okay. He's going to need all the help he can get. Alexander Madison, former Viking running back, will also be there to help him out. And then this tight ends group, I'm very excited about with
Dude, it's like gonna be a three tight end group, man. We might have run three tight ends out there.
yeah, Michael Mayer already over there from Notre Dame entering his second year, but get Brock Bowers in there too. And
Dude,
I love this duo so much. It might not be all that spectacular this year, but for years to come, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. So I think the Raiders are like in that exciting tier, but I don't think that they're in any position where they're going to be a playoff team just yet.
agreed.
But keep an eye on them. I think that they're making some right moves though. They're doing some right things over there, which doesn't always happen with the Davises owning that team. So,
It's true.
and I
And
will go ahead and
yes,
check what that Vegas schedule looks like for us too. So yeah, as I said, they got the game at the Chargers week 1, and then they're at Baltimore. So tough back-to-back road games right there to kick the year off before you get to host Carolina and Cleveland. Then you're at Denver, host Pittsburgh, at the Rams, host the Chiefs, at Cincinnati, at Miami. What a 4-game stretch that'll be. Then you get to host Denver for a break there. Then you're at Kansas City, at Tampa, host Atlanta, host Jacksonville, at New Orleans, host Chargers.
I see them being like 7-10. I'm feeling 7-10, maybe 8-9, but more 7-10.
I think you got to get 7 there to indicate that you're on the right track. But yeah, that middle of the season is going to be brutal for these guys. And that leaves us, Ben, with the Denver Broncos, who they got to replace 3 guys in their secondary, and they decided to reach on a quarterback with their first-round pick instead. So
they're winning.
That defense had so many issues.
They're winning 3 games. They're winning 3 games this year.
That defense had so many issues last year. They, of course, allowed the 70-piece to the Dolphins.
And then, like, randomly almost shut a team out, which is also weird.
Lose Pro Bowl safety Justin Simmons. You lose Jerry Jeudy, which maybe isn't that much of a loss. We'll find out in Cleveland.
Got rid of Russell Wilson.
Yeah, traded Russell Wilson. So you're all in on Bo Nix, or I guess Zach Wilson is the other quarterback option they got over there. But yeah, Denver's got some work to do over here, and I'm not sure that they had as good of an offseason as they needed to. They didn't address some things. Not that running back's all that super important, but that is also a position that I think needs addressed. They got Jaleel McLaughlin over there, who they think might start. Javonte Williams might be on his way out, apparently. I don't know. But yeah, man, Denver, I think, is finishing last, and they do have one of the, according to Sharp Football, the 8th hardest schedule in the NFL, which we'll read at the end. But what do you think of Denver's hopes and dreams this year?
Their hopes and dreams are going to die very quickly. That's what I got to say. I don't have any faith in that organization right now, and I don't think many people do have much faith in that organization.
Oh, yeah, check this out. So at Seattle, host Pittsburgh, at Tampa, at the Jets, host Vegas and the Chargers, at New Orleans, host Carolina, then at Baltimore and at Kansas City, host Atlanta, at Vegas, host Cleveland, host Indy, at the Chargers, at Cincinnati, host Kansas City. Ooh. Man, if you're one of those teams like we were talking about, hard end of the schedule, let's just say that for hypothetical reasons, Denver's like 6-6 at the end of the year. Playoffs are within reach. And then you got to finish the year with Cleveland, Indy, Chargers, Bengals, Chiefs.
Yeah, losses.
Could lose all 5 of those.
Yeah, I see them winning like 4 games. Man, I think they go like 4-13, maybe 5-12.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and be a little generous and say 5. But yeah, a lot of work to do in Denver, and I think this season's going to reflect that. And we'll see how much longer Sean Payton can survive over there, because I'm sure that hiring him in and bringing Russell Wilson in last year, I mean, we were very high on the Denver.
Oh yeah, I was very high. I was very high.
Yes, we thought that was going to do some wonders, and now here we are saying, are they even going to win 5 games a year later? But
it is something else.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. The AFC West and the Big 12 completed.
We still, as we're recording this, have no idea what's next. We always talk about it after the show, so it's a surprise for you. I will say, well, there's actually a big football game coming up next Saturday, so a week from tomorrow, well, as we're recording this, so a week from Saturday, the 20th of July, Ben Bowden and the offensive coordinator cap that I wear will be taking place in a championship game. Cowbells will be facing the Titans, 2 Budapest teams, for the championship of the HFL. My dad's going to be there, which is going to be really cool for me. And we're actually playing in a stadium. It's not really a stadium. It's a rugby field, but it's close enough to a stadium.
Sure.
But it's exciting. So if we win, that'll be the first title for the Cowbells since 2017. So really looking forward to that. It'll be fun playing it in the evening time. So hopefully it's not too hot. But yeah, that's what's happening in the football world over here in Hungary. But yeah, other than that, if you loved doing the last 2 weeks, then let us know in the comments. What are some extra added things you want to talk about? Again, we'll kind of come up with an idea of who we're going to talk about next. But on top of that, I hope you guys love the episode. If you have on YouTube, go hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe bell, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification
bell.
There we go.
Quentin Johnson, Quentin Nelson.
We're all just messing up today. But I hope that you guys enjoy it. If you do those things, that's going to let us know that you're enjoying it. Gets us out to more people as well. Goodness, I'm choking up at the end. And if you've loved listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, go ahead and let us know by giving us a rating. I believe we have 4 or 5 stars on Spotify, which I thought was really cool.
Exciting.
4 of you is probably all of our family members, but
Ben, myself, and both
our
moms.
Yeah, so we love you. But yeah, so thank you guys again so much for listening. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and until next time, we'll see ya.